Matthew, one of my favourite places on the Lincolnshire coast, Anderby Creek. You can't come to a beach without having a little bit of a scavenger hunt, can you?
No, it's the law, isn't it? It's fantastic to just wander along. I take ages just bent over double, just scanning and just seeing all the various treasures that you find along the shoreline.
I thought you were poorly. That's what I thought you were doing when you were bent over double.
I do have a bad back, but that's not the reason today.
No, OK. What have you found then? Let's have a look at in your hand. Some coal here, isn't it?
Yeah, I was just amazed that you can actually find coal washed up on the beach, as well as all the shells and other things. There's bits of wood and other things some of the wood is actually from the remains of trees from kind of like the last ice age. It's incredible.
Wow, and you've got a very soft pebble in your hand as well.
I just thought that was really, really tactile and nice, so I just picked that one up,
Yeah, you keep hold of that. We've got Dave and Vicki with us as well. Dave, you've got a whole collection there. What are you looking at?
Yeah, so a different selection of some of the seashells you can find here. So we have a thick trough shell. Now occasionally you find out of a little round hole in the top there, and that's where it's been predated by a dog whelk. So these are bivalves, you usually get two sides, but we usually get the one. This one here is a slipper limpet, so it's an invasive species, but quite interesting. It can be in a tower, up to about 7 or 8 high. The bottom one is the female, and at the top is the male, and they kind of like breed. And then when she passes away, the next one above, that becomes a female then.
Oh.
And so they kind of keep that cycle.
What an intriguing life they have.
Not that rare in the sea. A lot of species, a lot of fish as well, will change sex to when the opportunity arises. It's just the top of a whelk shell. Sometimes you get them really nice. So they're a snail. So it's similar to the garden snail, but just live in the sea. This here is a hydroid, so a lot of people think of this as a seaweed, but it's actually a colonial animal, a hydroid related to the jellyfish. What else?
Now, what are these? These look like a razor blade.
Yeah,
don't they?
Well, that's right. These are the razor clams or razor shells, and you can even see the growth rings. Look, if you look on their side there, you can see how it started out small down there, and it slowly got bigger and bigger and bigger. Like a tree would have rings on a tree. Basically, yeah.
Oh, wow,
absolutely.
yeah. Bit of crab there.
Yeah, a bit of crab. So
Seen
that
better
one there,
days, isn't it?
That one has a bit of an edible crab as well. So I'm not sure it's rather than the usual shore crab.
Very nice. Now let's come across here to Vicki. Another piece of crab there, Vicki?
I have a piece of crab, yeah. The reason I got this one is you can see when we look at knives and forks and your knife has a rough edge.
Yeah.
You can see that on crab claws. So you can actually, they're basically like built-in little cutters. They've got their own little knives and forks for them.
Lovely.
So they're always worth seeing if you can still open and close them when you find them on the beach.
And crunched in your hand there's some seaweed?
Yes. This one, a lot of people are surprised by this. This is actually an animal. It's a colony.
An animal?
Yeah, so these are two different types. They're called hornwrack. And if you have a look really closely at them, they're covered in lots of tiny, tiny little holes.
Yeah.
Each one of those holes would be one individual animal.
No.
Yeah, so this is a bit like a block of flats and each hole is an apartment.
It looks quite rubbery. Can I touch it?
Yeah, of course you can. I've been told when it's fresh it smells like lemons.
Okay.
But I've never been brave enough to sniff it, I'll be honest.
No lemon smell there for me today, no. And this one?
This is the same, so this is just a different species of hornwrack. And what you'll find a lot in the sea is that animals look a lot like plants.
Right.
And it's because a lot of them are filter feeders. So by having a soft kind of body structure like this means they can move around in the water and then they can catch the food as it moves past in the current.
So these are not sort of fixed to the seabed. These are just floating around in the sea.
They are a little fixed, if you see, but they only have like a small little attachment point.
Yeah.
So we don't actually find much seaweed here because it needs to be attached to a rock. Whereas these have got like really small attachment points. So that can be on a shell, it could be on a little bit of stone, and that'll be enough to hold that in place.
I bet you never tire of coming to the beach. There's always something to find, isn't there?
Oh, yeah, it's like a treasure trove.
It is.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So Dave Miller, first of all, tell us where we are and a bit about your role as well.
Good morning, Melvyn. Yes, so we're here at Anderby Creek, up in what's called the Coastal Country Park, so in between Chapel St Leonard's and Sutton-on-Sea. A beautiful stretch of the beach here, so we can see beautiful sandy beaches. And the wonderful thing about this beach is you can walk it pretty much from Skegness all the way up to Mablethorpe if you so wished. But so it's a lovely beach here, nice and quiet at this end. Haven't got the Skegness and Mablethorpe kind of like crowds of people. A beautiful area. And as you can see here as well, we've got the dunes here behind. They're really kind of like expanding out. There is the beach nourishment here, so more sand is beyond the beach, coming on the beach. And you can see the first thing to get in is pretty much the marram grass here, holds the dunes together. Wonderful little plant there, lots of little life living in amongst them. And then as that goes up, we have the sea buckthorn. So it's this beautiful plant along here. It's only found on the coast. You've only got to go across the road and you won't see any of that there. So really spiky plant, wonderful for the migrants. So whitethroat and sedge warbler, love nesting in amongst there.
And of course, the plant life holds the dune in place as well, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, some people do think, for instance, the sea buckthorn was introduced over on the west coast. It's not really found on the west coast because they thought that hold the dunes together. It does not. It doesn't grow very deep, the roots. They're kind of shallow and they spread out, and that's how the plant spreads. It's that grass. That's the important stuff. The marram grass, those roots will go down meters, to 5-6 meters, finding water. And that's what binds the dunes together.
I remember coming to Anderby Creek for the very first time. We used to come camping here with the family, and the very first impression coming up over the ridge onto the dunes, looking across the beach area, absolutely fantastic. And it is a place where people come and enjoy the beach and the sea.
Absolutely, that's right. And you've got lots of room. That's the lovely thing here. You can spread out the wonderful sea out there as well. So nice and shallow for people to go in, paddle away in. So not too deep, not too ferocious. You can get out there as well. And of course, it is full of wonderful wildlife out there as well.
Tell us a bit about your background. How did you get into wildlife and nature?
Well, I did a career change, so I went back to university at 32, did a zoology degree. I've always had an interest in nature, but wasn't in it professional. And then since then, I've kind of worked my way up. Never, as you can probably tell from the accent, not a Lincolnshire person. So originally from Dorset, but I've been here now since 2007. I was a assistant warden at Gibraltar Point. And then lucky enough to get a post as a coastal warden in 2010 and working along up here since then.
So coastal warden, have you got designated areas along the coast that you look after then?
Yes, so we got it in the Coastal Country Park. We used to have a few, they're called clay pits. So they're the sea bank clay pits, and they were dug out after the 1953 flood to augment the sea defences along this coast. And afterwards they were designated as nature reserves. But they were small little islands. There's about seven of them along the coast here, small little islands. And the Wildlife Trust, since about 2009, 2010, has been working to link them together with the county council, the drainage board, and private landowners. And so now there's a real nice network of reserves up and down here, highlighted by Anderby Marsh, which has been flooded just next to Anderby Creek. And we managed in 2021 to increase the water holding capacity, and now that's become a fantastic reserve there.
You were on the marsh this morning. What did you see?
Yeah, so it was fantastic this morning. So the sandwich terns, they're moving around. They were their biggest ever roost we've had there. So over 200 sandwich terns roosted on the marsh there, just overnight, and now they're gone to go out feeding out to sea, of course. But it's just wonderful, indicative of how successful that's been now on that marsh. And
you talk about these different areas. It is providing these corridors for wildlife and nature, isn't it?
Absolutely. So, of course, we're lucky here in Lincolnshire. You have the Humber Estuary at the north, the Wash down there in the south, and now we're trying to give that link in the middle as well. Working as well with the National Trust and the other people there coming in, creating these new habitats. We've now got breeding lapwing here, breeding avocet, which we've never heard before, and we're just increasing their range where they can breed.
We talked about the plant life in the dunes, but will there be animals, will there be birds nesting in the dunes as well?
Oh yes, absolutely. So the sea buckthorn is fantastic. It's a huge population of whitethroats. So they're a warbler migrant, come up from Africa, and they spend the summer here, and they breed in there. So we're going to get them in their dozens along in the sea buckthorn, and we also get the linnet, the dunnock and robin and wren. I know people see them in the gardens, but they love that really dense bush to nest in and get big numbers. And of course, where you have these warblers, you also have the cuckoo. This is a fantastic place to see cuckoos. There's the
I've
June.
never thought of that. Cuckoos on the coast.
Yeah, well, that's it. Well, they're becoming a coastal bird now, pretty much, cuckoos. But the June walk from Anderby down to Wallerbank is a fantastic spot to watch cuckoos flying around.
Okay, great expanse of sand here. Any wildlife in the sand?
Probably a bit less than sand. You get the sand flies hopping around, but because the sand is kind of pumped up, the actual sand itself on here on the beach, not so much. Once you get down into the water, you can see quite clearly the lugworm burrows, and also you get the sand mason worms. You'll see the little tubes. During a low tide, they'll be full of these little tiny tubes sticking up out of the sand, and they're the worms in there. And so that's providing the food for a lot of birds as they're flying through. But you won't see that until low tide.
Yeah. And you do a bit of sea dipping as well. I've heard of pond dipping. I've not done any sea dipping though.
Oh, you should come along and try. It's fantastic. So yeah, we get little push nets. We just go into the shallow surf, and it's a lovely one for kids. But it's amazing what we'll find. We did it last week, and I had a lovely pipe fish. So that's a relative of the seahorse. So again, there's one where the males get pregnant, look after the babies. So that was lovely to see. Lots of different types of crabs. So we get the shore crab, but then a specialist one called the swimming crab. So the back legs are flat, so they can swim around.
They're called a swimming crab?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So yeah. So the back legs are flat. And then also we get to things like the brown-tailed shrimp, which are probably the basis of the ecology out there. You can get them in the hundreds. That's what a lot of the birds are feeding on as they go around. We've also got sand eels. And we did get a weaver fish, which is one of the maybe not so nice ones to find. But
is that the one you shouldn't stand on?
That's the one you shouldn't stand on. That's right. Okay. Yeah. So we've managed to catch one of those. And now this time of year as well, we're starting to see the jellyfish come. So had quite a few moon jellyfish. You also get the compass jellyfish here. And something I'm trying to find out more about, I found a lot last year, was the crystal jellyfish, which is a really strange kind of, it's not really a jellyfish, I think, but it's a strange thing trying to find more about.
Do we need to worry about jellyfish on the coast in Lincolnshire?
No, not really. The main one is the moon jellyfish, so no real sting. We do get the compass ones as well. I mean, I wouldn't advise you to go picking up jellyfishes on the beach, but I've never been stung by one. I'm in the sea most of the time. So
yeah. Now look, we've got the telescope here today as well, looking out to sea, because you do a regular viewing of the sea. Are you looking for things like seals, or is there more to see out at sea?
Yes, well, we do see seals quite often here. So again, down south, we have probably about now, we've got the common seals. They're pupping down at Gibraltar Point off the sandbars, and of course the famous Donna Nook further north. So you get the grey seals. So we do see seals here on this coast. But one thing we'll be looking out for, especially coming up soon, the National Whale and Dolphin Watch weekends. We do try to look out to see if there are any cetaceans, and cetaceans are whales, dolphins and porpoises.
Well, that's a group name for them, is it?
That's the group name for them.
Yeah.
And the sea's very shallow here. So one of the problems is you don't often see big whales or anything out there, because it's so shallow here on the seas. But what we do get is something called the harbour porpoise. So a very shy, reclusive animal. It doesn't demonstrate lots by breaching and everything, but you do occasionally see the dorsal fin going through and coming along.
Have you been lucky in the past seeing some here on the Lincolnshire coast?
Yes, if you spend your time looking, you virtually always will see some out there. We've proved since I've been working here in 2010 that they're there all year round, from January to December. And then you hope during the summer it's a bit nicer weather, you might see them. But a lot of it depends on what's going on around here. So sometimes if there's work out here, they don't like to be disturbed, so they're going to go further out.
But you're not going to get this great leaping out of the water. It's just going to be a little glimpse breaking the sea.
It's a tiny glimpse of a dorsal fin breaking the sea. And sometimes you hear people say they've seen a shark, but it's usually a porpoise breaking through. But I think it's important that we show they are here. I was contacted by Sea-Watch Foundation to get some data here, because there was a bit of a black hole in Lincolnshire and people didn't think they were out there very often. But we showed, they're there all year round. Occasionally see a juvenile, so maybe they are breeding out there. And now we have, of course, the Harbour Porpoise Marine Protected Area just off our coast here as well, and off the Yorkshire coast. So it's great news.
What's the day-to-day work like for you? Because we've got people coming onto the beach today. It's a changing environment all year round, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So at the moment we're doing lots of grassland management. So on a lot of our reserves we're trying to create a flower-rich environment, good for the insects. It's not been a good year this year for butterflies, but we're trying to create that. So with volunteers, we're mowing lots of areas, trying to create those flower-rich areas, which goes lots of insects. And of course, if you have lots of insects, you'll have lots of birds as well. So, and that's the main focus of element this time of year.
Vicki, we've got the waves lapping behind us. Just tell me a bit about your role, first of all.
Yeah, so I'm the Senior Education and Community Officer, based down at Gibraltar Point, but I cover kind of the east side of the county. So we spend a lot of time working with schools. So we have a toddler group from about 12 months, and then we work all the way up through to university students and adult groups as well. So we have quite a wide mix of people we engage with on a daily basis. And
A toddler group, you're getting them young, aren't you?
Yeah, we start them off as young as we can, and it's just getting them excited and just noticing stuff. And then as they kind of build up and they get older, we bring a little bit more into it. So you can always do it as fun stuff.
Lots of educational groups visit Gibraltar Point, don't they? You get a great number there.
We do, yeah. So particularly, unusually for the sites that we have in Lincolnshire, we get a lot of older students. So more than half of our schools are GCSE, A-level, university students. And we do a lot of survey work with them. So we teach them kind of methodologies, and it's that kind of path towards a career potentially, and the skills that they'd need to be able to work in the field.
So what sort of projects do you do with them then?
The main ones we do transects through the sand dunes. So we look at how the plants change as you work your way from the sand all the way through, and how the species vary. And we go onto the salt marsh, and the salt marsh is really patchy. It's based on how often it floods and the height of the land underneath it. So we look at the 3 different zones, and again they look at how the species change. So the plants build up the species, but you can record the plants and find out about the habitat itself.
Just in this small area here, we were talking to Dave about the marsh, and just looking across the beach area, you've got the marsh, then you've got the dunes, then you've got the dry sand, then you've got the wet sand, then you've got the sea. This is a great example, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's really changeable. It's really dynamic. It's always been used as a really good example for students of following like lines of succession and seeing how places evolve. And sand dunes and salt marsh are created by the plants that live within them, and the beach and the tides and the wind around them. So we're a perfect example of how a soft sediment coastline can be a brilliant learning tool for anyone, really.
Tell me a bit about your background. Why wildlife and nature for you?
I studied marine biology, then did a bit of environmental management. Then I went abroad for a little while, working on projects, training people up, building up capacity and skills in countries. And what I learned, the idea was to do conservation work, but I found that as a whole, a lot of conservation projects struggle when they can't communicate and share what it is that's trying to be protected with people. So when I came back to the UK, I went more down an education line, because I want people to experience it. I want it to be more than just somewhere someone comes to visit. I want it to be something that they love and that they want to look after. So education for me is a key way to bring conservation to life, really.
Looking after and protecting, that's key, isn't it? So people come to the beach, fantastic, have a great day, but make sure you don't leave your rubbish behind. That's part of it, isn't it?
It is. It's very much a leave nothing but footprints type of idea.
Yeah.
So anything you bring with you, take it away. I recommend as well, if you find a bin but it's full, don't pop it down near the side, because that actually ends up back out in the environment as well, and that actually ends up causing just as much of a problem. Litter creates litter. So if we don't leave anything behind, then actually that will create a nicer environment for us to visit, but also something that's much better for the wildlife as well.
You're really keen on reducing plastic use, so much so that you've actually brought a litter turn, not a little turn,
No.
a litter turn.
Yes.
Just explain what it is.
So what we've been doing, we're working with a local artist called Mark Stedman, and it started last year. We wanted to get people talking about rubbish and how much we find on our coast. So we were lucky enough to get a bit of funding to bring Mark in, and he's been working with us to create these birds with plastics and waste that we found at Gibraltar Point. And we have a little flock of them. They're just outside of our visitor centre at Gibraltar Point, and we've got a couple inside that you can see as well. And they're made of plastic from the beach. So the idea is we can talk about the fact that litter is a problem on the beach, because you can see what they're made of. A lot of people think they're real, so they've caused a little bit of confusion. But also...
Well, they do move, don't they?
They do, yeah. They've been designed so they can move around a little bit. So you can... Sometimes they look like they've fallen over, so you have to prop them back up again. But it gets them talking about the rubbish, but also little terns are the last colony in Lincolnshire is at Gibraltar Point, the last breeding colony. And we wanted to get people talking about that as well, because they're in our sanctuary area, but we're not actually very good at talking about it as much as we probably should. And this has created a really nice start point to do that.
Always a fine line, isn't it, between having something you're trying to protect, letting the public know it's there, but not wanting the public to disturb them.
Yeah, it really is. And at Gibraltar Point particularly, the beach is closed quite a lot, and a big area of it through the summer months, and that is to protect these birds because the nests are actually on the sand. So it's really easy to not see them, be able to walk on them or scare the adults or the chicks away. So the sanctuary plays a really important part, but a lot of people don't realise why it's actually there. So if we can try and find ways to introduce people to the species that are down there, then hopefully that will encourage people to want to respect the boundaries and help us to do that as well.
I was talking about people coming to the beach, enjoying the beach, not leaving their litter, but some of the litter that we get on the beach doesn't come from visitors during the day. It's washed up from the sea, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's a real mixture. So depending on where you are along the Lincolnshire coast, depends on the type of stuff you find. So we're here at Anderby Creek at the moment, so this is more stuff you tend to find left behind. So here you're going to get things like bottles, beer cans, disposable barbecues, things like that are really common up here. Lots of cigarette butts as well. Tiny, tiny little things, but make a big difference.
That people don't perhaps assume they make a difference.
No, and they can break down quite quick, but they have plastic and they've got chemicals inside them as well. So they're actually quite harmful to the environment, but quite often pushed into the sand and not really thought about.
Right.
Whereas when you get down to Gibraltar Point, because of where we are, the currents tend to drop a lot of stuff off down there. So we tend to find a lot of fishing gear down there. So ropes, nets, we find a lot of protective clothing. Sometimes you can get yourself a whole outfit by the end of a beach clean.
Oh my goodness. Has these been washed off boats?
Yeah, potentially knocked off or broken off when they've been out working, and they've eventually worked their way onto the beach. But we can get random things. We found a chest freezer before. You know, anything can wash up. Once it's out in the water, there's a potential for it to wash back up.
My goodness. And that's why you have fairly regular beach cleans, isn't it?
We do, yeah. Between myself and Dave, we try and organise beach cleans all the way up and down the coast. We're trying a new thing this summer to do some on the 9th and 10th of August, but at slightly more unusual hours, to see if we can get people coming before work or maybe afterwards on the Friday, and then an earlier and a later one on the Saturday, so it's easier for people to work it in around their lives and their routines and their holidays. So hopefully, fingers crossed, it will work out and we can hopefully try and build on it a little bit each year.
I like the sound of that, because people will often say, oh, we would have come along, but I was doing this, that and the other. So you're giving them some options, aren't you?
We are, yeah, because historically we always tend to start about 10 o'clock because the car parks aren't too busy, so people can get in, and there are ways the places start to get busy, so we've not kind of in the way either. So yeah, this is our first time, kind of one of them's at 7 o'clock in the morning, so people could potentially come and then still be able to get back, get ready to work. And go out, so still take part, hopefully.
Yeah, we were talking to Dave about looking out to sea and hopefully seeing potentially a porpoise or something like that. Have you caught a glimpse at all?
No, I've never been lucky enough. I think the bird watchers do better because they watch out to see all the birds, and gradually they're lucky enough they see the harbour porpoise pop in. I'm not as much of a bird watcher. I'm more interested in what's under the water, so yeah, I've not been lucky enough yet.